So Nick Clegg is standing down from the board of the US tech giant Meta after 6 years in one of the top jobs at the company. The former deputy leader. The Liberal Democrats joined the company in 2018 as head of global policy. He's to be replaced by his deputy and the prominent Republican, Joel Kaplan, who previously served as White House Deputy Chief of Staff under George W. Bush. Trump once called Meta the enemy of the people, and 3 weeks out from the inauguration, it's surely not hard to see this as a deeply political move. Zuckerberg has been hard to rebuild bridges with the president-elect, and Kaplan is well respected within Republican circles. So let's sit up there with our panel. Abel, it can't be a coincidence, can it, that 3 weeks from Donald Trump taking office, there's a change at the top? Absolutely, Christian. Whole new ball game in town come January 20th in Washington, D.C. Everybody knows it. It's going to be a Republican-controlled town. So why not have somebody at the top of Meta who has connections, who's worked with Republicans, knows the Republicans? And I think it's just a good move, to be very sincere with you. And Meta will not be the only company that does this. You'll have a lot of companies that will change their top people or shake it or move it around in order to be there because it's a new sheriff's in town with a new posse. It's a Republican town, and I think Meta's doing the right thing. And let's not forget, Zuckerberg met with Trump at Mar-a-Lago long ago. So I'm sure they had a conversation. I'm sure that was kind of set up in place. So here we are. It's a new day. And it's a really interesting point that, you've got Elon Musk sitting very close to Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago. He's made some quite big changes to X. He's changed the algorithms. The monitoring has changed. Does that mean then that, as Abel suggests, we're going to see big changes at Instagram and Meta as well? I don't think what Musk was doing at X is going to be reflected at Facebook and Instagram. I think what you see is what the congressman mentioned, which is, it's a new administration. Republicans are the name of the game. And they already had Joel Kaplan working for them as the deputy. I have to just say I'm very pleased for him. I worked with him at the White House under George W. Bush. He's immensely talented. He has a lovely family. He's known as being a very loyal man, loyal friend. He took a risk during the confirmation hearings of Brett Kavanaugh, who I also worked with when he was the staff secretary for President George W. Bush. He took a risk of a type because he was working at Facebook and he came and he sat right behind him during those confirmation hearings and didn't care that supporting his friend was more important to him than a lot of the lies that were being spun in the media about Brett, who then became a Supreme Court justice, and he's doing a great job there. But what is happening with Musk at X is a little bit different. So Facebook and Instagram, they're facing a lot of challenges at the local level, and I'm sure it will potentially federally as well. Because there are many studies coming out showing that Instagram is really bad, particularly for teen girls, for self-esteem, that social media use contributes to higher levels of anxiety. And there are different states that have already introduced legislation restricting access to minors. Or you even have Australia, who banned social media use for teens under 16. But the interesting thing, Annika, is that actually the conservatives, the Republicans in Washington, have not really shown much interest.
In this country, we've had the Online Safety Act. The European Union has brought in the Digital Services Act. It's a bit of an open field at the moment in the United States. Although, interestingly, on the right side of the House, they've shown more interest in regulation to keep freedom of speech open, which is a peculiarity, but not to monitor the things that you're talking about. There's going to be a philosophical difference. Conservatives tend to think that families need to be strengthened with the tools they need to protect their children, and Democrats are going to say, let's make a law. And so you'll see. So New York State, for example, as a Democratic governor, that's where they're considering things like a law. I think there's a law in Florida as well, though, under the Republican governor. So this is playing out, right? Republicans, conservatives really care about free speech, but there's also recognition social media maybe is a different animal. But does regulating it actually solve the problem? Because the problem, if it causes anxiety, it's not just for kids. It's also adults as well. How many parents are having to struggle with, okay, am I looking at my phone too much instead of attending to my child in this moment? But how you deal with that is where policy comes into play. But as I was saying, with X, Elon Musk took a platform that famously was censoring people, kicking people off. They kicked President Trump off. Facebook and Instagram didn't have that same issue. So I think it's a little bit different. Right. Okay, I mean, there is this traditional Silicon Valley view, Abel, that governments are terrible, regulation is terrible, particularly European governments are terrible. And that was a view that Nick Clegg helped change. And I just wonder if this is going to be a problem for UK and European governments on this particular issue of safeguarding and the way that speech has changed on X. Is it going to be a problem that he's not at the top anymore? No, I don't think so. Think what we've just heard, obviously. I think traditionally a high-tech Meta, and those folks have always been with the Democrat Party. And I think that is changing. We're starting to see the shuffle at the top, Christian. So having Mr. Kaplan come in, who I don't know, but from what I've read and what I've heard is very, very qualified, is going to be a great thing for Meta. It's going to be a great thing for the Hill, and a great thing for President Trump from the standpoint that there's going to be good communications. Are they going to change the differences between the parties of what they're asking for? I think it's going to be give and take. I can guarantee you this. Nothing's going to go through the House without the blessing of President Donald J. Trump as we move forward.